MLB DFS picks, Monday, July 29th. The out of the base path picks. The low owned, undervalued. Let's give the unknown their time to be known. These are the picks that typically don't get enough attention in your traditional show, your live before locks, your articles, because they can't cover every single person. Those would be marathon shows and tomes of words on a web page. And the first guy is going to get plenty of love, and we know him very well. Nick Pivetta, $8,500 versus Seattle. This is not really an out of the base path pick. It's directly in the base path, as is Paul Skeens. But for $2,000 cheaper, as I mentioned in my DK Network article free, check it out. $2,000 in savings in a much better matchup. We love what Skeens is doing, but again, it's Skeens. Doesn't always get the run support, doesn't always get the wins. Yeah, he's 6-1 on the year. Last 8 games, he has only won 4 of those. Heck, in his last game, that 8 2/3 innings for Paul Skeens, 8 strikeouts, but he didn't even get the win. So, save 2,000. Nick Pivetta versus Seattle, 29% strikeout rate, just a 150 ISO, 297 WOA, but WRC plus 96. They don't hit with a lot of power, which is actually good because that is our concern. Pivetta, strikeout pitcher versus strikeout team, advantage Pivetta. You got a pitcher that doesn't strike out Seattle a lot, then you might run into some trouble. You got a pitcher that does thrive on the K, then they can absolutely take advantage of this team that doesn't have a lot of pop. Although, as the 96 WRC plus suggests and their standings record, they can score runs, they can get to pitchers, but this is not a good matchup for them. Now, the one concern is Pivetta and his 1.6 home runs per 9, fly ball rate a little too high, home runs to fly ball rate a little too high. But being a strikeout pitcher, he's one of the guys with a better xFIP than an actual ERA. That's just mainly because of park changing and home runs being factored in and out of some of the advanced metrics. Last start wasn't very good, but we do need to put an asterisk next to that. He did get 6 strikeouts in that last start, but you got to look at where was that last start at, folks. Things can go wrong when you're pitching in Coors Field, and things did go wrong for him. He did get the 6 Ks, 2 home runs, though. Didn't last very long. It was at Colorado. Rest of his matchups, he's been pretty solid. Look, he is not the most consistent pitcher, but in this matchup, you feel fine going there. Been good against lefties. Struggles a little against righties, so there's some right-handed bats with Seattle if you want to go in that direction. Randy Rosarena, the new Mariner, hitting well in his return. I mentioned that in DK Network. A 1.205 OPS lifetime versus Pivetta if you are a BVP truther. And even if you're not a BVP truther, right-handed batters have some pop against Pivetta, who allows fly balls and home runs. So, ultimately have no problem. Do I think he's going to pitch a clean frame? No. But do I believe he could strike out 10 Mariners? Absolutely. All right, so let's continue on down to talk about more of the guys that are not going to get much attention. Alec Marsh, second season in the pros with the Royals. Hasn't been the greatest year. 4.75 ERA, although that is a little bit better than last year, which was in the 5s as a rookie. Slowly developing. He is their number 2 prospect. He has good games. He has bad games. But we're ultimately attracted to Marsh because this is a matchup where it's the White Sox and their 24% K rate, 124 ISO, 270 WOBA, 72 WRC plus. Even cooler, cool over the last week. Marsh, you look at his last start, 5 earned runs. Yikes, scary, oh no. Well, 3 of those runs came in the first. Then it was bookended by a 2-run home run in the 5th. So for the majority of his at-bats and pitches, he was decent. Rough start, and then the gas kind of wore out, ran out. Look, it's not the greatest situation, but you know who Alec Marsh is. His stats tell you who he is. This year, he has doubled his sinker use. And so what was kind of just an average fastball, which did get a lot of called strikes, maybe getting a little bit more called strikes this year. It's grading out much better, although he hasn't changed any vertical movement on it, really. He hasn't added any velocity. I think it's simply the matter of, right, Batters are now having to face a lot more sinker balls, and so maybe they're taking a little bit more fastballs. Either way, his fastball has been working out pretty well this season, and as typically is the case, when we look at these teams that rank towards the bottom in WRC+, they also rank towards the bottom in hitting fastballs, sinkers, cutters, and that would be the case for the White Sox. It's definitely a matchup where he can thrive. Last season, his K rate was about a tick higher, and he had a pretty good K rate throughout the minors, but he had command issues. He has since gotten better at his control. He has since lowered his walk rate, which is good. Makes you feel much more comfortable. He does have the potential to strike batters out, get those called strikes, so he could take advantage of this 24% K rate weakness. You know, it's hard to trust Alec Marsh, but he does have the pitch mix and repertoire to get past these lowly Chicago White Sox. As I mentioned the other day, yesterday with Joey Cantillo, I would much rather have a lower K, better control young pitcher in a great matchup than a high upside, big strikeout guy who lacks control in a tougher matchup. And we saw that with Cantillo. Carson Spires. I didn't start the Spires. Is that what you're going to sing today after this game? Or you're already singing it? No, I didn't start the Spires. Well, let me give you a reason that you might want to start Carson Spires against the Cubs. Now, the first scare, 7,500 is pretty steep for Carson Spires, I would argue. He has earned it slightly. But in a game at home in Cincinnati in late July, boys, $7,500, he definitely is going to go low owned. Now, the matchup says, hey, he might be fine. 24% K rate for the Cubs, well below average against right-handed pitching. Cool coming out of the break. The park scares you. It's Great American Small Park. And Spires, the ground ball rate's okay. He gives up a little bit too many fly balls. And that could be a serious issue in Cincinnati, despite the matchup being good. And if he were a little bit cheaper, we wouldn't have to ask as much from him. But at 7,500, we might be in a tough spot. But anyway, one of the beauties of Carson Spires is throughout the minors, he had a very low home run rate. He doesn't give up a lot of home runs. This year, his hard contact rate is 29%. So that really plays well in Cincinnati. And it's one of the reasons why he does have a 3.83 ERA. Although Cincinnati, the stadium hasn't helped. He has lowered his walk rate this season. He's gotten better control, 16.8 called strike rate. It's a smaller sample size because he has only pitched, 47 innings, but that does rank in the top 25. The knock against Spires, which is going to be the knock against a lot of Reds pitchers, he's better on the road. Just like we mentioned yesterday with Hunter Green, nearly threw a no-hitter, as expected and anticipated, because he has been so much better on the road. He was facing a Tampa team not very good. So, yeah, that was a real no-brainer there. So you want to flirt with Spires, I don't mind. That is definitely an out-of-the-base path pick. And he might get called out for going so far out of the path on that one. Jordan Montgomery. Definitely an out-of-the-base path pick, although he is coming closer to the base path over his last couple starts. We'll throw those up. Well, I mean, technically he is, and he's in the path. He's out of the path, and you'll see that in 2 of his last 3 starts since returning from the IL. Now, before going on the IL, he was starting to seem to get it all put together. He comes off the IL, puts up a tremendous game, or actually comes off the IL at Kansas City. That was his first start back, 14.9. So 2 of his 3 going into the IL before he got injured, not bad. Last outing gets roughed up, probably wasn't healthy. Tough matchup against Kansas City. In his return, 5 innings pitched, just 3 hits allowed, only 1 earned run, strikeouts aren't there. But, I mean, you can't really ask for much more for a guy coming off the IL. Now, why do I really like the Jordan Montgomery play? Why am I probably jumping on him a little earlier than I would like? Well, first of all, we look at splits for Montgomery. Being a lefty, you would expect him. I'm not going to worry about all of these stats, although I probably should. Now, that 346 BABIP and 62% strand rate, as I mentioned before we went into the last game, when he was coming off the IL, said, hey, maybe Montgomery is a play because things just haven't been going his way. xFIP much lower than his actual ERA, getting BABIP'd, not stranding runners, not getting out of jams. You would expect those numbers to maybe regress positively. So we first look at his splits. Absolutely in control this season against left-handed batting. Absolutely out of control against right-handed batters. Well, the beauty of this one is there's a reason why the Nationals do not hit left-handed pitching. They don't strike out a lot, but a 108 ISO, 286 WOA, 83 WRC plus. The reason is that the majority of the Nationals bats are left-handed batters. Montgomery should control those. And we got to worry about the right-handed bats. Now, there are 3 bats in the lineup that you might want to be concerned with. CJ Abrams, but he is a lefty. Abrams hits lefties well, but Montgomery should be able to neutralize him. So then it really comes down to 2 right-handed bats. Montgomery versus 2 right-handed bats. Lane Thomas is real. Lane Thomas, his WOBA is near north of 400, maybe close to 500 if I remember correctly, against left-handed pitching, but he doesn't have really above average power. I believe it's a 180 ISO. So we can deal with that. The next guy you got to worry about is Juan Yepez, and he's a bit of the wild card. I wrote him up in my DK Network article. Yepez got cut by the Cardinals after 2 disappointing seasons. Nationals pick him up with about 800 OPS in the minors. They call him up, and he's been hitting really well in the month that he has been in Major League Baseball, especially against left-handed pitching. But again, it's a very small sample size, and at the end of the day, the former number 14 prospect for the Cardinals got cut by the Cardinals. They didn't believe in him, and it's not like they really have murderers row over there at St. Louis with tons of guys ready to take over. They didn't believe in him. He was good in the minors, not great. It's been really hot in July. Good against left-handed pitching. But we're talking about 2 hitters. Lane not having a lot of power. Yepez, we don't really know what to expect from him yet. The rest of the lineup, Montgomery shouldn't have a problem with. Jake Bloss. We discussed him in the last every 5 days we're talking about Jake Bloss, and he took the loss in his last start on July 23rd against Oakland, which should have been a great spot for Bloss. And for the most part in that game, he was good. But for 4 moments, he was bad. What were those 4 moments? 4 home runs. He only had an 8% ground ball rate, which is odd because in the minors, he has a 41% ground ball rate. In the minors, he didn't allow a lot of home runs. So he attributes to just mistake pitches. He had a good whiff percentage in that game. If you look at his pitches, he was generating whiffs. He had a 13% swing strike rate. Just got burnt by those mistake pitches. Overall, if you want the big analysis, he is their number 2 prospect, 92 in Major League Baseball, drafted in 2023, already called up. He wasn't expected to be in MLB until 2026. He's here now. Tough matchup against Paul Skeens, although he doesn't face Paul Skeens. And Paul Skeens doesn't often win games. So that doesn't scare me at all. It's a great matchup against Pittsburgh. 24% K rate, below average in every metric that we even care about. So yeah, the last start was ugly. You go to the start before that from the double major in math and econ. I believe it was against Miami. And he may have given up, if I remember right, he gave up a solo home run. And then also at one point, he walks a batter, has a couple wild pitches, and then a run scoots across. Overall, Jake Bloss has been fine. Let me pull that up just to double check while we floss on Bloss. Yeah, so as we floss on Bloss, 4 home runs, it's a concern. But that Miami game where he allowed 2 earned runs, solo home run early, and then they scoot across a run late because of wild pitches. Decent stat line against Baltimore. Doesn't score you any fantasy points. But we're really just waiting for the matchup to be right. Now, the matchup was right against Miami, and he didn't quite get enough done. The matchup was right against Oakland, and he didn't get quite enough done. But he's got the stuff. And it has been a general theme on this show every single day. We say, all right, this is a guy we want to watch. He's got the stuff to get things done. And they're like, but he may not be the guy to roster tonight. Well, every time we do that, that pitcher goes out there and absolutely crushes. Happened again yesterday. It was the River Ryan day. It happened the day before that. It was the Tyler Phillips day. Kyle Harrison, we weren't worried about whatsoever on Friday night. We said, nope, he's got the stuff. He's in the right spot. And he crushed. Those three pitchers, they've had the stuff and things look right. There's just, is it there yet? Are we too early? Well, if you were too early to Tyler Phillips on Saturday, you got a great performance. If you're too early to River Ryan on Sunday, you got a great performance. Like, well, River Ryan is facing Houston. It's a tough matchup. I don't know. Here we go. Jake Bloss, get the floss. Won't take the loss. Hey, thanks for joining me.